Louis Pasteur is often remembered as the soft-spoken guardian of the invisible world, a gentle scientist whose eyes twinkled like lanterns whenever he stumbled upon a mystery hiding in places most people never bothered to look. He was born in 1822 in a quiet French town wrapped in warm sunlight, cobblestone streets, and slow-moving rivers that shimmered like strips of silver ribbon curling through the countryside. As a young boy, Louis wasn't the type to run wild through the fields or climb trees with loud laughter. Instead, he preferred sitting by the riverbank sketching reflections, shadows, and curious shapes drifting beneath the water's surface. He stared at raindrops the way poets stare at sunsets, watching how they clung to windows before falling, as if they were tiny travelers carrying messages from hidden microscopic kingdoms. People often described him as quiet, dreamy, or too thoughtful for his age. But Louis didn't mind because his imagination was always buzzing like a busy beehive packed with secret ideas and possibilities. He enjoyed drawing tiny creatures, sometimes real, sometimes imagined, and wondered whether worlds smaller than dust might be full of drama, battles, friendships, and stories waiting to be discovered. While other children built forts or played soldiers in the yard, Louis built questions, stacking them in his mind like shiny bricks that formed towers of curiosity. His father, a hardworking tanner, hoped Louis would follow a simple, steady career, but Louis's curiosity tugged at him like a kite string caught in a strong breeze, pulling him toward science. When he finally entered school, Louis discovered chemistry and biology, and the excitement that bloomed in his chest felt like a spark bursting into a glowing flame. He stayed up late studying, his candle flickering beside piles of books stacked like miniature mountains he was determined to climb. Louis wasn't the flashiest student, but his gift for patient observation made him stand out like a lighthouse glowing on a foggy night. He believed even the smallest details could unlock enormous secrets, and he trained his eyes to notice clues others rushed past without a second glance. As he grew older, Louis became fascinated with fermentation, the strange and magical way milk, wine, and beer transformed from delicious treasures into sour disasters depending on invisible forces. Farmers worried about spoiled milk, winemakers fretted over rotten barrels, and Louis stepped forward with the calm determination of a detective ready to crack a baffling case. Under his microscope, he watched tiny shapes wiggle and bump into each other like microscopic dancers performing a chaotic ballet. He realized that these living space microbes were behind both the delightful and the disastrous results, acting like helpful workers or mischievous gremlins depending on their mood. When he told other scientists about his theory, many frowned so hard you could practically hear their eyebrows creak, as if he had suggested that sandwiches could magically turn into birds. But Louis didn't let their disbelief bother him, because when he believed in an idea, he held onto it with the stubbornness of a puppy refusing to drop its favorite toy. He kept experimenting, filling notebooks with detailed sketches and swirling lines that looked like treasure maps leading to new scientific lands. One day, he discovered that gently heating milk or wine for just the right amount of time could chase away harmful microbes without changing the taste. This technique blossomed into the process we now call pasteurization, a quiet hero that protects food and drinks across the world every single day. Louis didn't throw a celebration or dance triumphantly around the lab when he made this breakthrough. He simply wrote down the results and whispered to himself, "Nature reveals her secrets when we listen." But his curiosity didn't stop there, it was only beginning to stretch its wings. The more he learned about microbes, the more he wondered whether these tiny creatures were also responsible for diseases that swept through towns like invisible storms. Many experts dismissed the idea with dramatic hand waves, but Louis pressed onward, determined to understand the role of microbes in health and sickness. He built labs filled with bubbling flasks, shimmering glass tubes, and microscopes that stood like miniature telescopes pointing into hidden universes. The rooms always smelled faintly of warm chemicals, ink, curiosity, and the hopeful electricity of brand new discoveries waiting to emerge. Louis spent countless hours observing bacteria glide through droplets like stealthy armies sneaking across a dimly lit battlefield. He studied diseases in silkworms, chickens, cows, and people, tracing patterns patiently as though he were piecing together the world's most complicated puzzle. During his research, Louis developed the first vaccines using weakened microbes, training the body like a tiny army preparing for battles long before the enemy could attack. It sounded almost magical, as if Louis had discovered how to give the human body superpowers through microscopic lessons. His theory seemed unbelievable to many at first, yet Louis kept gathering proof, his excitement growing like a sunrise spreading across the sky. One of his bravest moments came when a young boy bitten by a rabid dog arrived at his lab, terrified and out of hope. Louis tested his rabies vaccine on the boy, a moment so intense it felt like the entire world was holding its breath in unison. When the boy recovered, relief washed over families, doctors, and entire communities like a tidal wave of gratitude. Louis became a hero across Europe, though he always insisted he was just a learner who listened closely to nature. During lectures, he spoke with gentle passion, his hands moving gracefully as though guiding invisible ideas through the air. Despite medals, honors, and grand ceremonies, Louis stayed humble, reminding everyone that science was a gift meant to serve humanity with kindness. He believed the smallest organisms on Earth held wisdom, power, and mysteries that could transform the world if studied with patience and respect. Louis encouraged young scientists to question boldly, imagine bravely, and observe carefully because answers often hid in places most people ignored. He often repeated one of his favorite sayings, "Chance favors the prepared mind," meaning that prepared curiosity often led to lucky discoveries. His discoveries forever changed medicine, farming, food safety, and public health, weaving new protections into everyday life. Pasteurization became a shield quietly protecting millions of breakfasts, lunches, and snacks without anyone noticing. Vaccination sparked new hope, helping doctors prevent tragedies instead of just reacting to them. Even when old age brought shakier hands and slower steps, Louis continued leaning over microscopes with the same youthful spark burning in his eyes. He mentored young scientists as if passing a glowing candle from one generation to the next, illuminating the path ahead. He believed science was not merely knowledge, but an act of compassion, a way of lifting suffering through understanding. Children adored hearing how a quiet boy who loved staring at puddles grew into the man who tamed invisible worlds and saved millions of lives. His story reminded them that heroes don't always swing swords or wear capes. Sometimes heroes wear ink-stained lab coats and carry notebooks filled with wild ideas. Louis showed the world that miracles could come from curiosity, patience, and paying attention to life's smallest details. Every time someone drinks milk, gets vaccinated, or learns about germs, a piece of Louis Pasteur's legacy glows quietly in the background. Scientific journals, museums, hospitals, and classrooms still echo his discoveries like ripples spreading across a giant pond. Doctors and nurses continue to save lives using methods inspired by the gentle French scientist who dreamed big by looking small. Parents around the world whisper thanks without even knowing it, grateful for the safety his discoveries bring their families. Louis's work shines like a constellation of tiny stars stitched into the night sky of human history, guiding explorers, thinkers, and dreamers forward. And somewhere in that cosmic tapestry, Louis Pasteur remains the watchful guardian of the invisible world, smiling softly at every young mind brave enough to peer into a microscope and ask, "What secret are you hiding today?"